Well, what is up, Mission? My name is Mike Hickerson. I'm honored to be the lead pastor of Mission Church. Man, if you're hanging out online or in the lobby, just honored that Mission's a part of your weekend plans. And I already saw head bobbing to the music. We got it right now, trying to figure out where's the love. We exist as a church to help people find and follow Jesus. That's what we go after together. I wrote some notes down for Taylor, who is our student pastor. He's amazing. I love him. He's incredible. But I have no clue what archery tag is. And if we need to contact our insurance agents about that up at camp, I'm sure it's safe. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. And if you have any questions about the Super Bowl, you can just email taylor.hunt@missionventura.com. He'd be glad to talk to you about that. He's passionate about the Super Bowl. Just kidding. He's not really that passionate about it. But he does like hanging out with people. Man, we exist as a church, like I said, to help people find and follow Jesus. That's what we go after together. And I wouldn't pretend to know where you're at with God, Jesus, Bible, church, Christians. Like, I understand that that's a journey to go on. And sometimes Christians aren't the best example of what God was supposed to be like. And so we have this idea and image in our mind of what God is, what church is, who Jesus was, what the Bible is and isn't, and it just kind of gets messed up. But if we call a truce around here for an hour on Sunday, because if God is who he says he is, and he wants to do everything that he promised to do, then that has big ramifications for our life. That he sent Jesus into the mess for us, to rescue us, to take our place for our intentional rebellion against a really loving God. That he said, you know what, I'll pay for that. So everything that we've ever done or will do has been paid for already by a God who rescued and saved us. And his desire is to bring us back into relationship as much loved sons and daughters of his. And so we have a few things around here. We believe that change is possible, that anyone is welcome, that there's hope for every single one of us, not because we're awesome, but because God is, and he did everything that we just talked about. But one of the key things that we talk about every Sunday, so if you're bored with this, you're going to hate Mission, I'm just letting you know ahead of time, that there are no perfect people. So if you're walking in expecting perfection, you're going to be really disappointed. There's no perfect people, but there's a perfect God who rescues and saves. In fact, to get our hearts in the right place, and especially since we're talking about love today and this whole month, it's just, it'll help us do this. Just turn to the person next to you. I'm not saying you love them. I just want you to lovingly say this and just say, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to lock eyes with you, and I want to tell you this one truth that's going to impact our relationship more than any other thing. It's this: you are not perfect. So just look at them with love, not love, but love in your heart, and just let them know that. They're going to say it to you. You're going to say it to them. It's going to feel so warm and fuzzy. It's going to be so great when we say this to each other. All right. You're not supposed to enjoy it that much. That's weird. All right, this is terrible to do later when you're in an actual fight, okay? Like when there's actual things going on. And if you just met this person, that's hard. That's a hard beginning to the relationship. But what's really helpful to do as the church together, as the people that God has rescued, is to realize that all of humanity is in the same boat without Jesus. Like, we're all sunk. We're all imperfect, but because God is who he says he is and has sent Jesus into the mess, that gives us the right to be restored as much loved sons and daughters. So there are no perfect people, but there is a hope for us that we don't have to stay stuck, that the change is possible. So we don't just stay stuck in the, well, I'm imperfect, this is all you're ever going to get. No, we can actually be transformed from the inside out, and change is possible. Now, every time we do a new series here, our team here is amazing behind the scenes, and they write like an invite card, or they'll put like a little synopsis of the series that we can kind of put out on social, or maybe we're like talking about it with. And I thought this one was so compelling. I just wanted to walk through what this series is going to be about. And so I'm going to read literally what they wrote. So this is not for me. This is the team here that's amazing. They said that cancel culture, division, and polarization, these have all become buzzwords over the last 3 years. However, they just aren't terms that we're familiar with. Rather, we've lived and experienced these things on our own timelines, in our own comment threads, in our own communities, around the tables with our friends and families. We've allowed differences in opinion of race and political views, just to name a few, divide us further and further from one another. And this is not at all what God had in mind for us. The question we're asking in this series is, where is the love? Because it seems to be missing. And what Jesus clearly teaches us is that love is the highest goal and the greatest commandment. During this series at Mission, we're going to look at what loving one another really looks like. And when we don't look alike, vote alike, or think alike, how do we make that work? This is a series we all desperately need for every relationship that we're in, because how we love matters. And so we don't want to miss a week. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're going after together. And we are a culture obsessed with love. I mean, we love love. I mean, we love to love that we love love. I mean, there's a lot of words in there, but you know what I'm saying, that we love love. And so what I want you to do as you're thinking there, and like the people you just talked to, if you don't know them, this may be an awkward one, so don't do this one to the people next to you. If you do know them, this will be a great one. That doesn't mean like a romantic love, but when you think of like love songs, like that we get obsessed with, that are appropriate for you to share with one another in this moment, why don't you turn to the people next to you and like, what are some songs that come to mind when you think of like, that's the love song? You know what I'm saying? So you get like 10 seconds, 1, 2, 3, turn to the people next to you and talk about love songs that come to mind. 1, 2, 3, go. Three, 2, 1. All right, what do we got? What do we got? Yell some out for me. Appropriately. Appropriately. What? Faithfully. Faithfully. Yeah. What? Wipe out. All right, that's good. We'll talk about that later. So just come see. I'm teasing. I know you're sore here. Yeah, what's up? What else we got? Whoa, what? All we need is love. Yeah. Sunflower. All right, let's go. Ain't no mountain, love me tender. History, we're trying not to date ourselves, but we're also like, that's my song, man. I got to say it. So I understand how that works. That's good. All right, let me just give us some, see if we can get some of these. We found love in a hopeless place. Anyone remember? Rihanna, you don't want to say it out loud? That's fine. And I will always love you by, yes. And oh, sweet darling, you get the best of my love. Eagles. All right, let's go that way. It must have been love, but it's over now. Roxette, no one was going to get that one. Sorry. Love takes time to heal when you're hurting so much. Mariah, thank you very much for that. I'm everything I am because you loved me. Thank you, Celine. Crazy Little Thing Called Love by Queen. What's love got to do with it? Yes, thank you, Miss Tina. She loves you. Yeah. But thank you, Beatles. I want to dance with somebody, but only somebody who loves me. Whitney again. Love will keep us together. Thank you, Captain and Tennille. I just called to say I love you. Stevie Wonder. Not sure how he dialed. We'll talk about that later. Like you never thought about it. All right. Greatest love of all. You know what, Whitney? You're wrong. The greatest love of all is just learning to love yourself. A great song, terrible theology. Power of love is a curious thing. Make one man weep, make another man sing. Thank you, Huey Lewis. I want to know what love is, and I want you to show me. Foreigner, thank you. Yes, you've lost that love and feeling. Thank you, Top Gun and Righteous Brothers. Love is an open door. Thank you, Frozen. I mean, we are obsessed with love. But we are obsessed with love on our own terms most of the time. And over this last season, we have been so divided and so incentivized and so echo chambered to get into our own area and do our own thing, and stay comfortable with who we know and how we want to do life. But we are not called, if you're a follower of Jesus, and I know not everyone in the room is, but we are not called to be comfortable. We are called to kingdom. And we have a very clear mission that Jesus has given us. And so when we're thinking about love just not on our terms, we got to go after it together. And so when we're talking about where is the love, where we're heading in this series, is that we got to talk about that love is mature. Like love, let me just say it, love grows up, all right? Love puts its big boy pants on and grows up. Love has empathy. Love involves sacrifice. Love is full of grace. I mean, love is really hard. That kind of love is really hard to produce on our own. Because I know you did, you know what I'm going to do this year? I'm going to get more loving. And everybody went, that's so good. So good that you want to get more loving. And it sounds like a cheesy answer to what you want to do. But love, this kind of love, is really hard to produce on our own. Try to white knuckle it. I'm going to get more mature this year. I'm going to get more empathetic this year. I'm going to get more sacrificial this year. I'm going to get more grace-filled this year. That's really hard to produce on our own. The desire kind of love, that ain't hard to produce on your own. But real love, that's hard to produce on our own. In fact, the Bible says that there's this way that when God gets into our lives, there's things that he produces inside of us. Most of us want to work from the outside in, but God wants to work from the inside out. Galatians 5:22 says it this way, but the fruit of the Spirit, like when you know somebody's walking with godliness, when you know they're being transformed from the inside out, when the evidence of who they are, when the evidence of like the character, when the evidence of the transformation isn't all the stuff that they do from the outside in, it's this kind of stuff from the inside out. And the goal of the Christian life is not just to be like, get your get out of hell free card. That's great and that's amazing, but to be transformed from the inside out. The fruit of the Spirit that we're supposed to be about is love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. And I'm like, if you ever done one of the words of the year, like some of the team around here makes us do the words of the year and I hate it. I'm like, this is so dumb. I'm not doing a word for the year. And then I end up doing a word for the year. Most of my words from the year are super sexy stuff like this list, like kindness. Because I'm like, you know what God would really want to grow me up in this year? Kindness. Because I'm so mature that I haven't figured out kindness yet, because I try to white knuckle it from the outside in, but the power to be transformed comes from the inside out. In fact, there's different kinds of love, and you may have heard this before, so I'm not trying to give us any new information. Maybe this is new to you, but there's different kinds of love, because you can like love a couch, and like you can like love a car, and you could like love your brother, and you could love your spouse. And those are way different kinds of love, but it's all one verb. So it's helpful every now and then to just remember the four kinds of love that are out there, especially when we're talking about what's biblically what we would talk about. There are four types of love. There's this friendship type of love, like this philia, this like this, Philadelphia is where we get that. That's that loyalty, friends, like band of brothers. That's like linking arms, like we're in it, for life, that kind of thing. That's where like when you got Ventura love, like that's that kind of thing right there. You got Oxnard love, that's that kind of thing right there. You got California love, that's Tupac and all that other stuff. We talk about that later. But that's that kind of feeling, like a brotherhood love. Like no matter where you're from, like brotherhood, like we're in this. The city of brotherly love is like that philia. Like we got boys, we got people, we got 3 a.m. friends, we got community. That's who we are. That's one love. Then there's the passion love or the eros love, and this is like what gets all the billing. Right, this is what Valentine's Day is like manipulated us all about. Thank you, Hallmark, for making a ton of money on this eros type of love. It's used to sell everything from shampoo to hamburgers. I don't think I need to describe eros type of love, because that's most of the one we only want to know about and the only one we want to get good about and the one we think the world is judging us on. Is how attractive we are, or how attractive our person is, or how good we are at trying to be passionate in love. But that's not all that love is. In fact, it's the smallest part of real love that we need to be about. The third kind of love is this family love. It's the storge. It's this idea of it's like the parents, it's the brothers, it's the sisters, the aunts, the uncles, it's the extended family, it's mi familia, it's that kind of thing. And sometimes there's friends that can kind of, they're family that can kind of blend into family. They're friends that become family. So there's that phileo love. It's like my band of brothers, but there's also sometimes friends can jump into that storge family love. It's like ride or die right there. This is like the blood. Like that we're talking about, that kind of love. And then there's this selfless agape love. Like that's the love that God has towards us and that we are called to have towards other people. It's this sacrificial, spiritual, for the betterment of the other love. It's the kind of love like in Ephesians 25 that it says, husbands, love your wives. Not just eros your wives, but love your wives like sacrificial love, just as Christ loved, agape, the church, and gave himself for her. That's the kind of love we're talking about. And just for fun, this is free. If you want a great marriage, it's all four of these kinds of love that we need to learn to grow in. The selfless love, the family love, the friendship love, and the eros love, like the romantic love. We spend most of our time trying to figure out this as married couples and try to make sure that this is working when we've lost all the other three, and those are the most important. I'm not saying that this one's not important. It's very important. It's great. It's amazing. But that's the one that we spend most of our time thinking about, obsessing about, and trying to perfect, when these are the ones that pay off and pay the bills over the long haul. You with me, married couples? You got me? All right, so that's what we're going after in this. And to love is all of those things. To love, like Dallas Willard would say, is to will the good of the other person. Real grown-up, mature love is to will the good of the other person. We love something when we are devoted to its well-being. Some of us love our cars. We're out there. I mean, it rained, and so we were worried about it last night in the car, like what happened to our baby out there, because we are devoted to its well-being. Some of us love our 401ks because we are checking on it and we're hoping that we're investing in it right now and so that it can return when it comes back. Please, Jesus, let it come back. You know, like that kind of thing. But we are so devoted to its well-being that we love it. It's to will the good of the other. It's not the same as desire. When we love someone, all my interactions with him or her, I intend what is best for them. Everything I do regarding the other person, whether indirectly or directly, would be for his or her best interest. One of the ways that I talk about it when we're talking like with a married couple or premarital counseling is I say, your job descriptions in a marriage, and this is also in a friendship, if you want to have like a real deal, like band of brothers friendship, if you want to have real mature love in your relationships, is that my job description is to leverage everything that I am, everything that I can do, my abilities, my time, my energy, my effort, my money, like all that stuff to the benefit of you. How do I help the other person thrive in this relationship, physically, emotionally, relationally, spiritually? Like if both people in any relationship are trying to love each other like that, trying to help the other person thrive, it's gonna really, really, really work. Boss-worker relationship, friendship relationship, dating relationship, marriage relationship, like team relationship. Like if we really love each other and we want the good for the other, it's going to end up being great. And this is not new. Jesus answered this for us. He said this in Matthew 22. One of them, this guy was trying to test Jesus, like, man, you got a lot of rules in the Old Testament, Jesus. Like, can you just give me the Cliff Notes? And you're like, thank you. If you're just checking out church, you're like, I can't read. I don't have time for all that. I mean, we don't make time for all that. I would like to know what's in it because I want to pass the test. But can you just give me like the quicker answer? And he said, one of them, an expert in the law, tested Jesus with this question: Teacher, which is the greatest commandment of the law? Thank you that this guy tried to trick Jesus, and thank you that Jesus answered it so we can know and not leave it in doubt. Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. We cannot love other people in the right way if we're not allowing ourselves to be loved by God and if we're not loving God with our entire being. You will not get love right if you miss this step. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets, he's like synthesized all the Old Testament right there. All the law and prophets hang on these two commandments. Parents, I don't know if you're anything like me. I hope you're better. But I hate it when my kids don't get along. Like I got 3 amazing girls. They're awesome. They're like Jody, and that's what makes them amazing. They're so great. But it like drives me bananas when they won't get along. Like some of my worst parenting moments are probably when I think they're bickering or fighting and something like that. I'm like, I will end both of your lives right now. It's not true. That's not true. But like I obsess about them getting along because I want them to get along. Any parents with me that you just want your kids to get along? Now imagine this. If we as imperfect parents think that, can you imagine what God thinks about all the little children of his world that are his kids? And he's like, can we just get along? Like obsessing about how we get along. And you know how we get identified as his kids, Jesus would say? This will trip you out. By the way we love one another. I just want us to get along. I want my girls to get along. God's like, I want my kids to get along. And everybody's like, well, how we know who your kids are, God? Well, they should be loving one another with a selfless love. But I'm afraid we're not identified by that. Like we're supposed to be loving our neighbor, not just the people that love us back. But what I think we're doing is this: blank your neighbor. Like everything but love. Like gossip about my neighbor? Absolutely. Like post on the group chat about my neighbor? Yes. Write the HOA about my neighbor? Yes. Judge your neighbor, ignore your neighbor, compete with your neighbor, cut off your neighbor, curse your neighbor. Like, do I need to keep going? Forget your neighbor, neglect your neighbor, exploit your neighbor, cancel your neighbor, hate your neighbor. I'm not just talking about the physical people that live next to us. I think we're figuring that out. We got to be great at that. But like what Jesus is talking about is the humanity neighbor that we have. We're not real good at loving our neighbor. We know it, that we're supposed to be about it. But we like to put anything else in this blank besides what he's asked us to. And what I'm learning, and maybe you've got it figured out, is that anything that makes me love my neighbor less is godless. any person or system or church or religion that makes me love my neighbor less is missing the greatest commandment that Jesus boiled it down to. It's godless, and there is no power in it. There's this quote by Ian Watson that says, "We live on a contaminated planet. It is contaminated on every level. It should have been quarantined from heaven. No reasonable God would go near it with a 10-foot pole, but Jesus is no reasonable God. He became a human being and took on our uncleanness and your uncleanness and mine, but instead of the world infecting him, he infected the world with his immaculate infection, and it is still spreading." 1 John 4:19, we love because he first loved us. And we've got some growing up to do, church, Christ followers. We got to get about it. But this isn't a new problem. It's a very old problem. In fact, one of the first church planters ever, one of the first church leaders, he wrote a letter to a church that had this problem. Like they had great things where they could do spectacles and shows, but they had not love. So Paul writes this letter to this church, this gathering, this community of people in Corinth, and he says, we got to get about the right things because we're doing the wrong thing, or the right things, but in the wrong order without love. And so he writes this chapter of this letter. It becomes chapter 13. It's a famous 1 Corinthians 13. We read it at weddings, and we think it's amazing, and it's such a romantic chapter, but it has nothing to do with romance. So we're going to just take it back from a wedding. I hope you use it at your wedding. That's great. Most of the time, it doesn't need to be read at a wedding because the two that are getting married are really good at it right then. It may need to be read at the 25th anniversary because they need to remember it then. You with me on that? So we got to get about this love chapter, but the love chapter wasn't written about romantic love. The love chapter was written to a church, a group of people that were really good in their spiritual gifts, but didn't like each other and couldn't get along. It was written to a group of people that had conflict, that had missed the main thing. So we got to get back to chapter 13, out of the quagmire of romantic captivity to weddings and flowers and frilly dresses, and get back into where it's in real relationships with broken and messy people. And it starts like this. In 1 Corinthians 13, and maybe you've heard it, we'll fly through it. If I speak in tongues of men or angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. We'll hold here for a second. Like, that's pretty spiritually significant. If you've got all this supernatural power at your disposal, that's amazing. All you're doing is making noise if you don't have selfless love. Does not count to God. Goes on to say this in the next verse. If I have the gift of prophecy and I can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have a faith that can move mountains, that's impressive. I've never moved a mountain like with faith. Like, even my mustard seed apparently can move a mountain, and so my faith must be smaller than a mustard seed because I've never seen a mountain move, like, literally because of my faith. And that's impressive, but somebody in Corinth must have been able to do that. But if you can do that and don't have love, it is worthless spiritually. Let that sink in a little bit. We may be awesome at the Christian life, and if you are, teach somebody else how to do it, please. But if you don't have love and are awesome at the Christian life, it doesn't count as anything. So 1 Corinthians 13 would say, but do not have love, I am nothing. It goes on to say, if I give all I possess, super generous, super selfless, super sacrificial to the poor, and give over my body to hardship, I'd handle you could become a martyr that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. You could be spiritually significant and dead at the same time if love is not the center of it. If we got anything in the blank other than love your neighbor, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, if we got anything other in the blank than that, then we are bankrupt spiritually. Goes on to say, love is patient. This is when you read this as like, put your name in it, like Mike is patient, it's like, oh. Like, that's a good test, not for the person sitting next to you. That's a good, because you know their answers. You can tell them what they should be doing all day long. It's a good test for us to go, like, how impatient are you? Like, I'm very patient when I get my way. I am very patient with people that don't need my patience. This is written to a group of messy people and said, love is patient So that means we need to be patient when there's people in our world that need our patience, because that's what love looks like growing up. Love is kind. Love does not envy. This idea there is like, not that you're just mad that that you don't have it. Envy is like you're mad that they have it. Like, I don't want it, but I'm just mad that they have it. Like, love doesn't do that. Like, I'm not really mad that God was good to them. I'm more mad that God wasn't as good to me as he was to them. Like, love doesn't do that. It does not boast. It is not proud. Love does not dishonor others. Man, don't be talking about people behind their back. Like, I know you're right, and I know you know all the information, and I know that he's an idiot. But love doesn't dishonor others. Love is not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. Ooh. How's that trigger going these days? Fine when everything goes my way. Fine when nobody owes me anything. Fine when I'm getting my life in the speed and the manner in which I would like it delivered to me by other people and by you, God. But love, grown up love, is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrong. This is like accountant. Like, you are like, well, last time 20 years ago, he did this same thing and I still have not let him off the hook, because you never know. Like, he did it once, he's doing it again. But love keeps no record of wrongs. And that's again, this is not written like as to marriage advice, although it's great marriage advice. This is written to a church, a group of people that couldn't quite figure out how to do this thing. They had great spiritual gifts, but had not love. And Paul is going, that's nothing if you don't have love. Goes on to say this. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. And that's a weird one. Sometimes you're like, of course, like we wouldn't want to delight in evil. No, what this means is love doesn't like sigh a breath when something bad happens to somebody else and you're like, yeah, I knew that was coming. Love's not excited about that when bad things happen to good people because they deserve it somehow in your mind. Yet we justify why bad things happen to them because they don't qualify for our love. And the last mistake that you made, God forgave you already. He justified forgiving you before you qualified, but we justified not being able to love them because they don't qualify. That'll mess with you. Listen to it again. That'll be helpful. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Love believes the best. Can you imagine if Israelis believed the best about Palestinians right now and Palestinians believe the best about Israelis, what the world would be like? Can you imagine that people of every skin color looking across racial divides and saying to each other, let's believe the best about each other, no more stereotyping, profiling, or fear that this may all turn out badly, because love would require us to believe the best about each other. Can you imagine the political scene if Republicans and Democrats believe the best about each other? Can you imagine what would happen in our workplaces, on our teams, in our homes, in our small groups, in our church, if we believe the best about each other? Can you imagine our world if just the Christians in the next political season, if just the Christians would love each other and love the world? Just like Jesus asked us to. Our world would be better for it and completely different if we would simply go after what Jesus has already asked us to go after. Goes on in verse 8, it says, love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. What this is talking about right here, great spiritual things are happening at the church in Corinth. It's amazing, that's cool. And Paul is going, you're not going to need that stuff in heaven. But you will need love. Because heaven is forever, ever. Forever, ever? Forever, ever. This stuff that you're good at, the gifts that we've been given, the spiritual stuff that we've got, the way that we do church and are the church on this side of heaven will not last. It is not needed in heaven. But love is. So let's get about that. Verse 11, when I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child, and when I became a man, I put away the ways of childhood behind me. And some of our ladies right now are saying like, yes, Jesus, please, for that guy sitting next to me. Let this be true. Let this be true. Because love grows up. I mean, what are you still doing now that you were doing in 4th grade that you haven't matured in? Right? Love grows up. For now we see only as a reflection as in a mirror, but then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. Maybe one of the most famous verses in all the Bible. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. I got 4 things real quick. And we're going to spend some time kind of thinking about what God would want to do through us. How can I be like that? Understand that we are loved by God. No matter what you've done or where you've been, God has given everything to rescue you right where you are. He knows what he got when he got you. Start small. Don't make big, grandiose gestures of love, because love starts small and grows up in that maturity, that long obedience in the same direction. We got to commit to love. And love is that byproduct of commitment. That's why when you see a couple that's been married 60, 70, 80 years and you're a young person in your 20s, you're like, I don't even get why they like each other anymore. They don't like look like they did back in the day. That's because that love is that byproduct of commitment that has grown over 80 years, and they are more in love at 80 years than they were when they just got married, because real love matures and grows up. And that's what it looks like in us. Consistent action. And then we got to be the kind of people that grow up in that and mature. Man, I want this for us. I want the world that we live in, because there was a time when the church people, the Christians, were known as the most loving people in the entire world. And I think we've lost that. But I think what we're being called to in this season, if the world is asking, where is the love? When real love grows up, it looks a lot like Jesus. So if we as Christ followers will grow up into that love, I think we'll all be better for it. Why don't you pray with me? God, you're good, and you're great, and you rescue and save. And God, we are obsessed with love, but we look in all the wrong places. God, real love is when you came down, you moved towards us, and you rescued and saved. May we be known by that rescue, and may we be known by that love that we have for you and we have for our world. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.